As of January 2026, over 3.5 million Americans have quietly switched to new firearms, and the numbers are rising every week. Experts warn that 10 major gun law updates taking effect this year could make your concealed carry illegal overnight if you're not careful. From stricter registration rules to limits on magazine capacity, these changes are creating panic across the country, and law-abiding gun owners are scrambling to stay on the right side of the law. Are you prepared, or could a simple mistake land you in serious legal trouble? Time is running out, and by March 2026, millions could find themselves unknowingly breaking the law. Take the story of James Miller, a retired police officer from Houston, Texas. James has carried the same Glock 19 for over a decade, meticulously maintained and fully legal under the laws he had followed his entire adult life. When he heard about the new gun laws coming into effect in January 2026, he brushed it off as typical bureaucracy. But by the last week of January, he discovered that the law now limited magazines to 10 rounds in most states where he holds permits, and his firearm came equipped with a 15-round magazine. Suddenly, his trusted weapon, once a symbol of safety and security, had become potentially illegal. Panic set in. James wasn't alone. Hundreds of thousands of Americans found themselves in the same position, realizing that what had always been legal was now fraught with danger. Across the country, gun shops are reporting unprecedented surges in sales. In Los Angeles, February saw a 42% increase in handgun purchases compared to February 2025. In Chicago, lines at gun stores stretched for blocks as anxious owners attempted to swap weapons or upgrade to compliant models. Experts warn that this frantic rush is leading to unsafe practices. Many buyers are opting for firearms they are unfamiliar with, trading the comfort and confidence of years of experience for compliance, sometimes risking accidents in the process. Gun safety instructors have reported a spike in emergency training requests, with thousands of citizens seeking guidance on how to safely handle unfamiliar firearms under strict new regulations. Then there are the personal stories that reveal the human cost of these sudden changes. Maria Lopez, a single mother in Phoenix, Arizona, was pulled over during a routine traffic stop in February and nearly arrested. Her concealed carry firearm had a magazine exceeding the new legal limit by just 2 rounds. The officers confiscated her weapon, leaving her feeling vulnerable and terrified. Maria's story is far from unique. Across the United States, reports are emerging of law-abiding citizens being caught off guard by these legal changes, sometimes in humiliating or frightening circumstances. These incidents illustrate the high stakes involved. One small oversight, one outdated understanding of the law, and ordinary citizens can suddenly find themselves facing criminal charges. The laws themselves are complex and sometimes contradictory. While federal legislation has imposed certain broad regulations, states like California, New York, and New Jersey are implementing stricter rules that override federal allowances. Meanwhile, Midwestern states such as Texas and Florida are enforcing new magazine and firearm registration limits while keeping concealed carry permit processes more streamlined. This patchwork of regulations is confusing, leaving even the most diligent gun owners uncertain about what is legal. Legal experts are warning that ignorance is no longer an excuse. Simply owning a firearm that was legal last year does not protect someone under the new 2026 regulations. Those who fail to adapt risk fines ranging from $500 to $5,000, suspension or revocation of permits, and even criminal prosecution in extreme cases. Consider the experience of Daniel Thompson, a 34-year-old software engineer from Atlanta. Daniel carried a compact semi-automatic for years, confident in his knowledge of state law. When he tried to renew his concealed carry permit in February 2026, he was informed that his weapon no longer qualified because of a new magazine restriction and a recent amendment in Georgia law that redefined which firearms were permissible for concealed carry. He faced a choice: surrender his trusted firearm or quickly switch to a new model, unfamiliar and intimidating. Daniel's anxiety mirrored that of countless Americans now navigating these unprecedented legal waters. Many are turning to online forums and social media groups, sharing warnings, tips, and lists of compliant weapons, creating a new subculture of panic-prepared gun owners trying to avoid legal trouble while maintaining safety. The surge in firearm purchases and law-abiding panic has also had broader social effects. Police departments across the country report higher call volumes as citizens, uncertain about what is legal, seek advice or clarification. Attorneys specializing in firearms law are inundated with consultation requests, often requiring weeks of waiting just to get an initial appointment. Law-abiding citizens are now caught between two dangers: breaking the law unknowingly and becoming easy targets for criminals, as their own firearms may be seized or rendered temporarily unusable while they navigate compliance. Experts warn that this combination of fear, legal complexity, and rapid change creates a ticking time bomb for the United States in 2026. Even the manufacturers are responding. Companies like Smith & Wesson, Glock, and Ruger are racing to release models specifically designed to comply with the 2026 legislation. Special editions with 10-round magazines, modified safety mechanisms, and state-specific features are being marketed aggressively, often at premium prices. However, supply chains are strained, and not every buyer is guaranteed to get a compliant firearm. This scarcity is driving prices up, fueling panic, and creating a market ripe for illegal sales and black market activity. Experts warn that in the coming months, law enforcement may also crack down on unregistered or modified weapons, further complicating the landscape for ordinary citizens. The impact is not just financial, it's psychological. Gun owners, who once felt confident in their ability to protect themselves and their families, now feel constant anxiety. Stories continue to emerge. Elderly veterans being stopped by police because their decades-old weapons no longer meet current regulations, young professionals confused about what constitutes legal concealed carry, and parents fearful that their home defense firearms might be suddenly illegal. In a country where self-protection is a constitutional right for millions, this wave of sudden regulatory change has created unprecedented fear. It's no exaggeration to say that the psychological toll on Americans is immense. By April 2026, analysts predict that the situation will reach a tipping point. Millions more will be forced to switch firearms, update registrations, or risk unknowingly violating the law. Training courses are expected to triple in demand as new gun owners attempt to familiarize themselves with unfamiliar firearms. Law enforcement agencies are already preparing for a flood of compliance-related calls, fines, and confiscations. Meanwhile, the media is reporting a surge in black market firearm sales, as citizens desperate to maintain their self-defense capabilities seek shortcuts around the new legal hurdles. This is not just a story of regulations. It's a story of ordinary people caught in a whirlwind of rapid change. Imagine a family in Phoenix, a retired couple who have carried the same revolvers for decades. Suddenly, their firearms are deemed non-compliant. They must make a choice: surrender what has protected them for years, risk breaking the law, or navigate a costly and confusing path toward compliance. Multiply this by millions of households, and you begin to understand the scale of anxiety sweeping the nation. Fear is no longer hypothetical. It is real, palpable, and affecting every corner of the country. As the months progress, the combination of law changes, mass firearm switching, and widespread panic will likely continue. Experts warn that by June 2026, the legal landscape will become even stricter. Urban concealed carry permits are expected to be heavily regulated, magazine capacities further restricted, and new reporting requirements for firearm owners could be enforced. Millions of Americans are now playing a dangerous game of catch-up, with lives, finances, and freedom potentially hanging in the balance. The question every gun owner must ask themselves is urgent and terrifying. Are you prepared for the next wave of changes, Or will you be caught off guard like James, Maria, and Daniel? Millions are switching guns, millions more will be forced to, and time is running out. Ignorance is no longer an option. By mid-2026, the firearm you have relied on for decades could be illegal, and the consequences of inaction could be severe, ranging from fines to confiscation to even criminal charges. In a nation built on the right to self-defense, these unprecedented changes in 2026 are rewriting the rules overnight. The combination of mass panic, confusing regulations, and the human desire to feel safe creates a story that is still unfolding. But one thing is certain: if you ignore the signs, you risk being left behind, vulnerable, and unprotected. The clock is ticking, the laws are changing, and millions of Americans are already feeling the pressure. Your move now could determine whether you stay compliant or become another cautionary tale in the chaos of 2026. By May 2026, the impact of these new gun laws is becoming impossible to ignore. In California, thousands of concealed carry holders are rushing to comply with updated magazine limits, registration requirements, and state-specific restrictions that override previous federal rules. For many, the transition is chaotic. Gun shops are running out of popular models, online forums are flooded with desperate questions, and people are improvising in ways that put them and their families at risk. One story making headlines involves Robert Hayes, a father of 3 from Los Angeles, who attempted to trade in his legally purchased pistol for a compliant model. During the transaction, he realized the firearm he planned to switch to was sold out across the state. Frustration and fear mounted as he realized that if he didn't act fast, he could be breaking the law by simply owning the wrong firearm. Meanwhile, in New York, authorities report an alarming spike in confusion and non-compliance among concealed carry permit holders. Many residents who had legally owned firearms for decades were unaware that the law had reclassified certain pistols and magazines as illegal for concealed carry. In one incident in Brooklyn, a retired teacher was stopped at a routine traffic checkpoint, only to be informed that her firearm, perfectly legal for over 15 years, no longer met the new standards. She was terrified, unsure if she would be arrested, and her story has become a chilling example of how these new laws can affect anyone, even law-abiding citizens. Gun manufacturers are also under immense pressure. Companies like Sig Sauer and Beretta are racing to produce compliant models with shorter magazines, altered safety features, and state-specific designs. Limited stock has caused panic buying and price surges. For example, a standard Glock 19 compliant model that usually retails for $650 is now being resold on secondary markets for over $1,200, creating frustration and anxiety among buyers who cannot afford to pay double. This scramble has left many law-abiding gun owners in a state of desperation, forced to make hasty decisions about which firearms to purchase and how to stay legal. The legal landscape is also shifting unpredictably. States like Florida and Texas, historically more lenient, are now implementing subtle but impactful changes, including new reporting requirements for concealed carry permit renewals and magazine capacity restrictions. Experts warn that these adjustments could catch even experienced gun owners off guard. For instance, in Houston, several concealed carry holders were cited in April for failing to update their registration paperwork to reflect minor modifications to their firearms, a detail most had never considered important until now. The fear of accidental non-compliance is spreading like wildfire, leaving citizens on edge every time they leave home with their firearm. Social media has become a hub of both advice and alarm. Groups dedicated to navigating the 2026 gun laws are now reporting tens of thousands of active members sharing tips, strategies, and warnings. While some of the advice is legitimate, much of it is speculative, contributing to a growing sense of panic. Members post stories about being stopped by police, nearly arrested, or forced to surrender their weapons. Videos of confiscations, warnings, and interviews with fearful citizens are going viral, reinforcing a nationwide sense of urgency. Experts warn that this fear-driven feedback loop could exacerbate both public anxiety and unsafe handling practices, as people rush to comply without proper training or understanding of new firearms. The human toll of these sudden changes cannot be overstated. Families like the Lopez family in Arizona are now facing unprecedented stress. Maria Lopez, who was stopped in February for a minor magazine violation, is now hyper-aware of every regulation change, spending hours each day cross-checking her firearm against updated legislation. Her husband, Miguel, a construction worker, has had to delay work trips due to fear of legal repercussions while traveling across state lines. The couple describes constant anxiety, sleepless nights, and the feeling of being trapped in a system they cannot fully understand. Even law enforcement officers are acknowledging the strain. Police departments nationwide report that routine stops and interactions with gun owners have become more complicated and time-consuming. Officers are now tasked with explaining complex new regulations, verifying magazine capacities, and determining compliance on the spot. Many admit that mistakes could leave them vulnerable to lawsuits, while citizens remain frustrated and anxious, unsure if they are being targeted unfairly. This shared tension between law enforcement and civilians is creating a charged atmosphere, one where fear, confusion, and uncertainty dominate daily life. Experts also warn of a growing risk of illegal firearm activity as panic buying and scarcity push some citizens toward the black market. In cities like Chicago and Los Angeles, police have already reported seizures of modified firearms and unregistered weapons being sold at inflated prices. Law-abiding citizens who are desperate to stay protected find themselves faced with morally and legally precarious choices. Experts caution that even small missteps could result in severe consequences, from heavy fines to criminal charges. The stakes could not be higher. The psychological impact is widespread. Gun owners who have relied on the same firearm for decades now experience what psychologists describe as constant vigilance anxiety, a heightened, persistent fear that their firearm is suddenly illegal, unsafe, or insufficient. Families report strained relationships, disrupted routines, and heightened stress levels. Communities once confident in their right to self-defense now feel vulnerable and uncertain. The combination of strict laws, social pressure, and rising costs has created an environment of fear and instability. By June 2026, analysts predict the surge in firearm switching will peak. Millions of Americans will be forced to make rapid decisions about which firearms to purchase, how to comply with evolving laws, and how to protect themselves in a world that suddenly feels unpredictable. Experts recommend urgent action, updating registrations, attending certified training programs, and staying informed about state-specific regulations. Ignorance is no longer an option. Even a small lapse could have life-altering consequences. The stories continue to multiply. In Atlanta, Daniel Thompson, a software engineer, faces ongoing challenges after switching firearms hastily in March. Unfamiliar with the handling of his new weapon, he narrowly avoided an accident while practicing at a range. In New York, a retired school principal had to temporarily surrender her firearm after discovering a minor but critical detail in the law she had overlooked. Across the country, these examples are multiplied hundreds of thousands of times, each reflecting real fear, real consequences, and a growing sense of urgency. The social consequences are equally profound. Gun clubs, ranges, and training centers report unprecedented demand. Certified instructors are working overtime to train new gun owners on safety and compliance. Police departments are stretched thin as they attempt to enforce these complex regulations fairly. Legal aid organizations are overwhelmed with requests for guidance, leaving many Americans uncertain and anxious. Experts warn that by mid-2026, the combination of panic, legal ambiguity, and social strain could reach a breaking point, with public fear as high as it has been in decades. The crucial question for every American gun owner is now unavoidable. Are you prepared for what comes next, or will you be caught off guard like James, Maria, and Daniel? Millions are switching guns. Millions more will be forced to. And the window to act is shrinking. Ignorance can no longer protect you. By late 2026, your trusted firearm, the one you have carried safely for years, may no longer be legal for concealed carry. The consequences of inaction are terrifying: fines, confiscation, legal battles, and even criminal charges. In a nation that prides itself on the right to self-defense, the sweeping changes in 2026 are forcing millions into uncertainty, fear, and urgent decision-making. The combination of mass panic, rapid legal change, and real human stories of fear and loss is shaping a year unlike any other in recent memory. Citizens who thought they were safe are now on edge, law enforcement is stretched, and society as a whole is bracing for the ripple effects. This is the new reality of gun ownership in 2026. Unpredictable, high stakes, and terrifying for those unprepared. The clock is ticking, and the decisions you make now could define your safety and legal standing for years to come. Millions of Americans are already acting, millions more will soon follow, and the question remains: will you be ready? Or become another story of fear and regret in a country where the rules of gun ownership have changed overnight? Time is running out, and 2026 is proving to be the most consequential year in decades for gun owners across the United States.